Well, hey guys, it's Simeon. We're in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, and we've got none other than our friend Stan Gordon, who's going to give us an update. So Stan, what has been, you were telling us some things going on right here in the mall parking lot area. What's been going on around here?
Okay, well, I wanted to actually say the parking lot area, but
Yeah.
on this part of Route 30, right around the vicinity here of the Westmoreland Mall on 30, for the last few years, different people have been reporting seeing unusual objects in the sky. Mm-hmm. One really good case was a few years ago in the afternoon. A guy was at a traffic light, happens to look up, and there's this big, long, metallic, cylindrical object with no wings, similar to what the government calls tacs.
Yeah.
I've been dealing with them since the 70s in Pennsylvania, but this thing's just hovering there. He watches this thing, and right in front of him, it just vanishes and gone. And we've been getting multiple reports like that for the last several years. We're getting more reports on the other side of Route 30 around Irwin last year of these things hovering in daylight over the main business area where people were reporting them. We're getting reports all over the state about these things, but they're showing up more and more. But just more recently, March 26th of this year, right here, there was somebody behind the mall going to the restaurant. Two people, when they happened to look up towards the eastern sky, low altitude, there's this big solid black triangle just hovering there. And they're starting to go in the restaurant. They turn around, looked a couple times at it, turned around again, and it's gone. And we've been getting reports of the triangles for years and years, but in the last few years, we're getting more reports of these big, solid black triangles around this area. And some of these cases have been significant. There was an incident last year near Latrobe. So Latrobe is right on the edge of that section of the Chestnut Ridge, which is probably one of the strangest areas in the country for yearly annual reports of Bigfoot, UFOs, cryptids, the orbs of light, other anomalous phenomena, paranormal stuff along the ridge areas, especially along the dairy side of the Chestnut Ridge for whatever reason. So it's the other side of Latrobe. And so there was this fellow last year, I believe it was, early in the morning, couldn't sleep, was taking a walk, see the series of lights come from the Ligonier area into this big solid black triangles, no more than 1,000 feet over his head. And what does he do? He grabs his fully charged telephone, he hits it in video mode, he sees this on video record, he sees it on the monitor, he plays it back, there's nothing there. So we're hearing more and more reports of these unusual EM, electromagnetic effects, being reported from all over, with cameras, with night vision equipment, people trying to take pictures of these things, and quite often, fully charged batteries within a very short time are draining very quickly.
Was it just there was no video there, or was it just blank?
There was plain.
Have there been triangles in this area in the past, or is this a newer
sort of thing? Oh no, it's been going for years and years. I've been aware of them for at least the 70s. Yeah. We've had significant cases with the triangles, and the big cylindrical. We've had rectangular objects. We had a major incident. One of my favorite incidents was June 1st, 2013, only a few miles from here, of North Huntington, Irwin, PA. And here was a woman who was a non-believer in UFOs, 3-year-old child. She's coming out of a convenience store around 10 o'clock at night, I believe, riding down 30, and she said, couldn't believe what I'm seeing. I had to brake right in the middle of the 4-lane highway. She has this huge, solid, metallic, rectangular object with 2 tiers of lights, not like navigational lighting. It's only about 60 feet away, very low, around 60 feet off the top of the highway, taking up all 4 lanes. Her baby yells, "Mommy," flying iPad in the sky. She has to pass underneath it. She's on the cell phone, she loses her signal. When she goes underneath it, all the electronic displays in the car go out. The airbag, the temperature, the clock, she loses her phone signal, but she tries to take a picture with her phone, but would not let her go into photo mode. And as she goes down the road about a half mile away, all the electronic comes back on. Those are the kind of things that go on you never hear about.
What was the object again?
It was a big, solid, rectangular object. She said it looked like the gondola of a blimp without the blimp.
All the electronics going. How typical.
Yeah, and that's been going on for years. But you used to hear about it a lot back in the 50s and 60s, but now we're hearing more and more in more recent years again.
Just, Dan, I got to ask you this, because your whole book, Silent Invasion, 1973, Bigfoot and UFO Connection. I mean, you have always seen these phenomena coming in waves, both on the cryptid, Bigfoot side and the UFOs. Am I right, or am I?
Yeah.
It tends to come as, together at the same time, or? What would you say about that?
We never had a wave like we did in 1973.
No.
And that was just amazing what happened. But have there been on and off cases like that? Yes. And in more recent years, what I wrote about in Silent Age about 1973 and 74 with the Bigfoot UFO connection. Well, now these things are being reported all over the country and around the world, these type of things, especially with the strange orb reports.
Yeah.
So historically in Pennsylvania and now all over the country, in areas we have a history of Bigfoot encounters, you're getting reports of these small spheres of light below the ground, but in some cases coming up within a few feet of people. And that's what's going on more and more. These orb cases are significant. I think they're one of the most important part of the UFO-UAP mystery that people are just starting to hear more about. Now it's coming out all over the country. I know you're aware of cases in your area. You've heard about these reports.
Yeah.
And but we're hearing more Bigfoot researchers that didn't believe in these things having their own experiences now. And some of these people were just terrified.
Yes.
And these things are coming out of the woods a few feet away from them in recent years.
Right, this area is really full of that type of activity, right? Reading your books and then looking on the map, it seems to be really focused around the Chestnut Ridge area and this whole region, right?
Well, this region is very active, and there's a lot of reports from the mountainous areas, but it's not just those areas.
Yeah.
We're getting more reports from major cities, suburbs of major cities, suburbs, areas where there's not a lot of woods. Okay, we've had incidents in daylight over major metropolitan areas. So this thing is going on more and more. Even some of the Bigfoot sightings in recent years, they're in more populated areas where there's not a lot of woods.
Any Bigfoot or cryptid activity around here that you can comfortably talk about right now? I know you don't like to talk about stuff that's currently under investigation. Is there anything that happened past year or so that's...
I can just tell you this: in the last couple of weeks and in the last few days, some very significant, very strange cryptid cases are being reported. I'm still talking with witnesses, so I'm not ready to put that out yet. Okay, but I can tell you, even this year, there's been some very significant Bigfoot sightings, especially up on the Ridge area. So you've got Westmore and Fayette and Indiana County, so it covers quite a large area in certain areas. And they're seeing both the typical 7 to 9 foot tall creatures as well as the small ones. We're getting more reports of ones around 4 to 5 feet tall. Okay, so you had one interesting case earlier this year in the daytime where a person's looking across the woods over their property and sees this Bigfoot that's sitting down on an old tree stump. This person estimated this thing was probably at least 8 foot tall if it was standing up, but she got close enough to it that she could see its chest moving in and out as it was breathing. Yeah. Wow. And then there have been thunderbird sightings, an increase in thunderbird sightings last year. I've heard of 2 interesting cases this year. One was up on a ridge, another one was in another county in southwest PA. We're getting other type of cryptid reports coming in. We're getting orb reports coming in. It's amazing. I wrote down just a few notes, but one of my research associates, Jim Brown, up in Fayette County, which is probably one of the most active in the country, especially along the Ridge area. He's a real high-tech guy who investigates a lot of cases. And he was looking into an incident that happened January 21st of this year. And this was 5 o'clock in the morning. And this fellow was just wakening up and was having coffee in the kitchen. And he noticed this reflection on the wall, just though someone was outside with a flashlight reflecting on the ceiling. So he runs over to the window and he looks, and 20-25 feet away on the ground are these 3 spheres of light, these 3 balls of light, and they were about the size of a basketball. They formed into a triangle and suddenly shot straight up to the sky and gone.
Right in his yard.
Yeah. And those are the kind of things that are going on more and more.
Yeah, it's fast. I've always wanted to ask you this, we have these, in your area, in western Pennsylvania, you've had reports, it's in your books, these smaller hominoid creatures. I don't know what to call them. What do you call the ones that don't seem like Bigfoot? Do you have a name for them? Or is there a name that people give to them? The smaller ones, you've described smaller ones, and ones that we don't even know exactly where they fit on the kind of taxonomy of creatures.
We've had, back in the 60s, we had a lot of amazing UFO incidents. Not lights in the sky, not doors, but large structured metallic objects. Very large, low to the ground, hovering low with portals or windows. That was a very common thing in the 60s in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Okay. And some of these were I mean, really detailed cases. And some people reporting these small humanoid creatures. Now, some people may want to call them grays. It says there was some abduction reports. Not saying they're connected to it, but they were similar because they were small humanoid type creatures, around 4.5 feet tall. So they had those. But over the years, we've had small humanoid sightings of glowing creatures, in fact, that were gliding above the ground or floating above the ground.
Yes.
Okay. We've had winged humanoid creatures being seen, like the famous Butler Gargoyle case north of Pittsburgh back in 2011. And so you get all kind of weird things. And there's another case, I don't have the information right in front of me, but it just happened relatively recent time, again up in the Ridge area, in daylight. I don't have all the details with me. I'm still talking to that witness, but I'll release some information at some point of some kind of strange-looking, humanoid-looking thing. It was kind of a luminous colors, I remember. There's a lot of things.
Can you remind me briefly what the Butler Gargoyle case was? I might forget.
Yeah, I remember it very well.
What was it? 57, you said?
It was March of 2011.
Oh, 2011.
Yeah. And this is up near the town of East Brady, PA. I interviewed the witness right after it happened. I've been in touch with him for years. Guy is very professional person. I can't tell you his background, but you would find it really interesting what his background was, but I can't really mention it right now. But it was a normal night. He's riding home that night. It's around midnight, and going down a dark road, and his headlights catch something on the right side of the field. He thought it was a deer. Well, suddenly, this thing rises up from the ground, takes 3 big steps in front of his vehicle, and gone. But he said to me when I interviewed him, he said, people talk about Bigfoot sightings around here, but this was not a Bigfoot. This thing was at least 8 foot tall, but it was covered with light, leathery skin. The head was kind of shaped like an aerodynamic helmet. The eyes were swept back. It had claws for hands, and it had wings tucked into its back. It never looked at him. He only saw it from one side. Within a few days, people at the BORU research group in Butler were getting reports from other people seeing the same thing. And allegedly it's been seen again in more recent years.
Floating without actually flapping the wings?
Well, gliding but with wings, okay? And then, of course, everybody's heard of Mothman.
Yeah.
So back in 1966-67, when Mothman was going on in West Virginia, of course, I was monitoring the newspapers closely, but I was hearing rumors. Of course, in 1966-67, there's no cell phones, no internet. I was hearing rumors of something similar was going on in the Pittsburgh area in Allegheny County. Years and years later, I now have found 2 separate specific cases in Allegheny County during that time of a Mothman-type creature. And my latest book, Creepy Cryptids, has a detailed account from the best friend of the witness who wrote the whole story up. That witness is deceased. But that witness to that incident, who was parking with a girlfriend at the time when this occurred, came to his home in shock right after it happened. And that witness ended up in the hospital emergency room that night. And what happened with him is significant. It could be much stranger than any of the Mothman stories in West Virginia. So that whole story is in my Creepy Cryptids
Volume
book.
4?
It's Volume 4.
Right.
Case book 4.
I remember reading. Yeah, I'll have to go back and look at that case again. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, Stan, thanks for the update. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks for coming down to visit again. And people can go to my website, stangordon.info, and there's a lot of interesting things on there.
StanGordon.info, Creepy Cryptid series, Silent Invasion. If you're interested in these subjects, these are must-read books. So.
And one more thing, there's events scheduled all year long this year. Go to the upcoming events on my website. I'm adding more and more. But we have major events coming up. There's the Area 217 Paranormal event at the Sportsman's Club. There's the Derry, PA Railroad Days, which is kind of like Bigfoot Days now. You've got the big Kecksburg UFO Festival, July 18th and 20th. This is the 60th anniversary of the Kecksburg case. There will be thousands of people there. It's free for the public. And we have the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Adventure coming up, and a camping adventure in September at the Bender Campground, right in the middle of Bigfoot country. A lot of big names are coming from around the country to speak at it, so check that out and stop down to visit.
Thanks. And just as a historical note, Stan and I actually met when he was talking about the Kecksburg case at Bob and Ryan Wood's UFO Crash Conference in Vegas. I think it was 2002. It was one of the... That's actually how we connected. It had nothing to do with Bigfoot at the time. It was simply the Kecksburg case, and I still have the videotape from that.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. So, Stan, thanks very much, and we'll talk again.
Okay, thank you.